Let's just get like.
What's up, everybody, and welcome this evening to Give and Take. Yes, we made this into a game show wherein these two contestants are going to be thrown by this diamond person here a topic in the world of Flesh and Blood, and then they're going to have to give their take on this topic. And if I like that take, I'm giving them points. And if I don't like that take, I'm taking away points. That's how it's going to function. That's how we're going to do it. So based on what TCG Talk has told me already, it is not going well for him today because he absolutely abhors Kano as a hero. So he can prepare for a 0-point game. I'm the host this week, but I may not be next week. I am Dollar Store Justin Timberlake, and we've got Breezy on this side, and we've got TCG Talk on that side.
Dollar Store Justin Timberlake.
That's what a middle schooler called me once.
Yo, they're savage.
Nah, he wasn't that smart. He just called me Justin Timberlake. So like that was a compliment. But I was like, nah, man, I'm Justin Timberlake that you have at home. That's what I am. But welcome everybody to the evening. We're just gonna hang out, have a good time, and we'll throw some topics at you, chat, and these guys, and we'll go from there. Does that sound good to everybody?
Yep.
Cool.
I love it.
There's a lot of stuff to talk about over the past like 2 weeks, even though we're kind of throttling down from the World Championship and moving into 2024. But we've had a fair number of topics that have, I guess, served to be a bit divisive on Twitter and other social media spheres. But hey, I guess that's what those things are for. Social media at this point is kind of for the arguments or the discourse, if you will.
Yeah, I was expecting December to be like for me, like all of us being content creators. I was like, man, I have to think of stuff to do for the next month and a half. But no, it has not been hard at all.
Right.
People always
be
find
jolly
something.
and joyful for a month, but no.
That's right. I put up my Christmas tree. That's what I've done.
You have 2 Christmas trees. One
it's
in
an
your
office Christmas tree. Yeah, my wife was
Okay.
like, you know what? I need to buy you an office Christmas tree, and so she did. So I put it up. It's pretty cool. It's very festive.
Yeah.
Kind of a fan. Kind of into it. I need to put like ornaments and cracked baubles on it. That's what she was like. You need to go hang cracked baubles on it, which I think is a great idea.
We just need to see a real cracked bauble, like ornament from LSS. That'd be huge. Like instead of last year was the Christmas socks, right?
All right. Well, you just started us off. That is such a good idea. I have to start you off by giving you a point for that. That is such a solid way to start. There it is. Let's turn this off so that I can just hit the button. There it is. Boom. You get a point off the bat. I'm sorry, TCG Talk. It's going to be okay, though, because you're going to bounce back with our first topic. Should we talk about our first topic?
Yeah.
All right, let's hit it. Here's the first topic of the stream. Let's see if all my work that I put in this morning paid off. All right, so a couple weeks ago, we had sort of a rotation of one of the biggest heroes in the game, a wizard, an ice wizard by the name of Icelander, rotates out of the format and sort of triggers this big choice from all of these decks and heroes to pivot off of blues, off of maybe Arcane Barrier, off of like things that they had in the sideboard for Wizard. And as a response, or in response to that, we see the wizard over there rise to prominence over the course of the past few weeks and end up winning a Battle Hardened and you know, making a top 8 as well. So my question for both of you, and we'll start with Breezy first, is this sort of just like a natural thing that has come about by, you know, the worst matchup for Kano leaving? Or is this a simple omission by the community to run things that stop Kano and keep him in check? Or where does it fall within that, in your opinion?
It seems like a perfect storm because Kano's had this utility for, I don't know, since he's had Aether Wildfire under his control. So he's always had these big pop-off turns. Even before Icelander was a thing, I remember Kano still being a threat. Not as much as he is now, but then that had me thinking he hasn't gotten too much. Like, it's not like he got new legendary equipment that made his pop-off turn happen in different ways or anything like that. So it just feels like this perfect storm of everyone was so teched out for Icelander, which is a wizard. And then she goes away, and everyone's like, whew, we're in the clear. Freedom. And all the Kano players are just like, okay, I mean, we're still here. We can still do all the same things we were doing. So it feels like a lack of preparedness, maybe lack of awareness, and then just like everyone just so eager to be out of that wizard like sideboard package essentially. So everyone was like, cool, I can run this thing, I can run this. Oh, dash is pretty good. I'll run some tech into dash. Well, all of a sudden, you know, Kano can just turn 2 kill you if earlier possibly. So it just feels like this perfect storm. People weren't ready, and even if they were, they thought, wow, we just there's not going to be too many of them. We won't have to worry about them. So yeah, I think it's a good time for Kano because of that. Although we see this happen though. This happens, and then like the next week, everyone's like AB12,
Yeah.
and like hyper teched out again. So
Dylan, what is your
TBD.
opinion on this?
So I think it's similar to what Parker said, and I'll add a little bit to it. One is just the meta. I think the meta is really like suited for Kano right now. Like, yes, Icelander, from what I heard, was like a near auto loss for Kano if the Icelander was competent, like knew what they were doing. Oldham didn't really feel good for Kano. You really had to play perfectly to win that matchup, from what I remember. And like there was just a lot of decks that naturally had like either AB incorporated into their kit or just had a lot of ways to fight it. Now, like if you think of the top decks in the game, and this is a super open format, so this is all subjective, is like Azalea hates Kano really bad to fight that even with Oasis on the side. It doesn't matter. Yes, she has AB2 naturally in her kit now, but it doesn't matter because she runs so many reds. Aggro in general hates Kano, even though it is a dead race and Kano has to really hit his pieces early to win. It's not much you can do to combat that pop off turn once it happens. And then Uziri, which is also a top deck right now in the format, like it's an auto loss. You might as well just like quit. So I think Kano's just in a really good spot for the meta right now. I think it's a whole lot of other slew of things. Like from what I've heard, again, this is all second information. Actually, the person who's most experienced in Kano is the one asking the questions right now. But like even Kanos are figuring out how to play around Oasis as much as you can, right? Like I even heard Mask Momentum talking about like the reason he took so long on that one turn he won on in his top 8 or close to his top 8 was because he was like saying, can I kill even if they play Oasis? And so like he was thinking through that. So there's a whole slew of things. I don't think it's an issue. I think people need to stop whining about it, but that's just my take. Or Kano can just win every event in LL. That would be great too. If that'd be awesome. But no, I think the meta is just really set up for Kano. And I also think more people are interested in Kano. The amount of Kanos I've played on Talishar, because I play all the time just aimlessly on this week, is like at the point where I literally leave games, not because I don't want to play Kano, but because so many people are playing Kano that I want to play someone else, which I never thought I'd ever say in this game for that hero.
Let me ask you this.
I remember that.
I'm curious, and I'll hear. Let's go TCG talk first on this. I'm curious of your thoughts on this because I've heard some discourse on this already from a lot of people that don't like Kano, and they don't like Wizard perhaps in general, but specifically Kano because he is the combo deck. But from a fundamental standpoint, where you're talking about how the game of Flesh and Blood functions, do you think Wizard is good for the game of Flesh and Blood? Because it sort of plays on this sort of, I guess, completely different axis where you're not throwing cards to block and attack. And there's people on the internet, which, I mean, surprise is surprise, there's people on the internet that are upset that it's not sort of playing the same game as everyone else. TCG Talk, what do you think? Is Kano or Wizard good for Flesh and Blood?
I think it's fine. So there's literally two perspectives from this. So the one thing I've said this on Twitter, and like we've talked about it a little bit, is there's a push and pull of Flesh and Blood, right? Like the one mechanic, whether you're a competitor or not, is the push and pull of blocking, attacking, blocking. And there's been other heroes in the game that haven't serviced that, right? Even as recently as Lexi, like it felt like she could just say, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to block with like one card and 3-oak you. So like every really good hero in the game is kind of broken that mechanic to a very slight extent. I think the thing that makes people feel bad about Kano is on your side of the table as a Kano player, you do still feel like you have that push and pull. You're having to block with some cards, set up your combo turn. Like it actually feels like Flesh and Blood on your side. On my side, it feels like nothing. Like, because me, like, as like for example, I play Katsu and even Arachne, really two different heroes, but like The only time I'm pitching to you in those matchups typically is like Ether Spindle, because I don't want you to opt like 7 cards in your deck, and then your combo turn. Other than that, it's literally just throwing as much at you as possible to try to get you down to where you can't combo me. And so it eliminates the fun aspect of Flesh and Blood a little bit. I can, like, whether I beat you or not, it doesn't feel like I played a game of Flesh and Blood. Like Katsu, I had no game plan for Kano. My game plan was throw as much damage as possible so you can't find your combo. So I think that it eliminates that element that makes Flesh and Blood fun for some people, but it's hard because it's a dichotomy. On the Kano side, you feel like you're playing Flesh and Blood because you got to block with some cards that'll stay alive long enough to then piece together your combos. So I think that missing mechanic on the other side of the table is what makes it hard. And then the last thing I'll say is skill expression. At the highest level, Kano players might take a little bit of time every now and then, but they're pretty quick because they know, right? I mean, you watch Mask Momentum play, it looks like butter, like how fast he's going through his stuff. But people who are just learning Kano or even like semi-competent with Kano, they take like these 15-minute turns and it's not even a kill turn really. And it's like, okay. So that can feel bad sometimes too.
Breezy, what do you got?
Are wizards bad for Flesh Blood? I think just like seeing that question makes me ask, what would the game feel like if the threat of an all arcane hero wasn't always kind of looming in the distance? And it feels a little too vanilla for me. It's a world of like mystical, like, fantasy, and so you have to, I mean, you kind of have to have the trope of wizards. It just almost feels like if you really want to build that bridge of believable, you've got warriors, you've got brutes, you've got these, and to be honest, like rune blades are the perfect hybrid that bridge the gap between the two of wizards and warriors. So without it, it just feels like it would be a little too vanilla. So, but I think even someone said Kano no, wizard yes. I think Kano. I don't have a problem with Kano, but it is interesting that he was designed and developed in an era where the thought process is almost completely irrelevant right now. If Kano didn't exist, I don't think he would exist today. Based off of the way that they're trying to project the game, based off the way they're trying to design the heroes and their functionalities and their interactivity with the other existing hero pool, I think that he just was born in a vacuum of let's try things, and I think that's just one of James White's little brain children that just came to fruition. And today it's like it can be frustrating to play against. I agree with Dylan though in saying like on the opposing side of Kano, it can feel really grueling and like I'm just kind of either going to have to race you out or I can't play. I either those are my two options. I don't play or I try to play. But Kano side's like, he's doing the Zach Galifianakis math thing the whole time, and he's having a blast, and that looks real. I love sitting on the other side of the table, watching a Kano try to figure it out. And I always like, dude, you got it. That was amazing. I loved watching. Like, I'm not looking at the table. I'm looking at you because this is a reality show right now, watching you go through this. So I think that creates like cool camaraderie and being like happy for the people that can do this absurd math and pitch stacking and pull these combos together. I think that's super cool. But I think that Kano is a weird one and probably wouldn't exist today otherwise.
Okay, let me say this. I will step in as someone who absolutely loves Kano and Wizards in general. And I will say, I agree with you in several respects. I agree with both of you in several respects that as it stands right now, Wizards don't feel as though they are fully interacted with in the way that other heroes interact with. And I think the way to fix that, perhaps for the other side, is if Wizards receive more on damage do something, because then it almost encourages back and forth interaction. Because right now, when you play as a wizard, your cards basically don't do anything except deal damage. Like you look at a few of these outliers, you look at like Sonic Boom is like the one major outlier. And then just about everything else besides like your combo pieces don't really like encourage your opponent to interact with them or engage with them. Let me ask you, and this is just kind of off the record, if there were, like if this deals 2 damage, like your next thing costs 1. So like hamstring shot style stuff, or like those types of effects being applied to the wizard class, are you more encouraged to interact with them on a pitching level, or are you still just looking at the sort of zero sum game of like, I need to just push more damage so that I don't die to the combo? Is the combo the problem, or is the interactivity the problem? Lack of interactivity the problem? What do y'all think?
You
Go
want me to
ahead,
go first?
Dylan.
I'll go. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, so I've said this before, even before this whole Kano mumbo jumbo came up, is that there's two classes. So every class in the game you could argue is on the teetering, of being overpowered or whatever. But there's two classes specifically in the game that I think are literally an inch away from just being degenerate, horrible. They will ruin the game. It's assassin and wizard. Because assassin and wizard do two things that completely just like break tenets of like what you're trying to do in the game, in my opinion. Like if assassin gets a little bit more action point economy that actually go in its kit, it's gonna be a bad day for the game. If Kano, and with Kano it's the same thing. We're talking about specifically about Kano, so I feel bad because it's not wizard as a class, but Kano specifically, like the only agency I do have is that I can hold my cards and try to race you down or try to affect your game plan through my cards. The second you start making me have to pitch to other stuff, I feel like that's just going to make it feel really bad because now you have all these on hits. I say all these subjectively, but even like if Kano, in my opinion, had 2 or 3 cards like Sonic Boom and Ether Spindle and was it Ether Flare that's like the plus to the next one or whatever it is.
Yep.
If he had like 2 or 3 more cards like that, and now you're starting to say like every turn I hit you with, I'm making you pitch. You're now like, I don't know. I think Kano's just in a good spot right now. And that's the one thing we haven't talked about yet. And his last thing I'll kind of say on him is that I think Kano's just good now because of the meta. And I think people need to be okay with that. Like, yes, it sucks. Trust me. I'm an aggro player. Kano grinds my gears. But at the same time, like every hero that's been good is rose at some point. Like if Kano is good for the next 6 months, like is that a bad thing, right? If he LLs, like I'm saying it serious, not as a joke now, right? Like if he's just good, then that's okay. And I think people aren't used to Kano being good. So if Kano wins one battle hardened, people are like in a frenzy. And that if you look at the matchups that one Kano won, like not taking anything away, that Kano player is amazing. Look at their matchups. They played like several matches that are literally he probably could win with his like not even look at the person's deck, just like gold fishing,
Right.
because it's so one sided, like Uziri.
Yeah,
so
no AB or anything. Yeah,
like Uziri winning turn 2 by just drawing a random card.
Right.
So anyway, but yeah, that's my thought. The short answer is I think it's hard to give Kano more on hits. I think Kano's just in a good spot right now, but people aren't used to it.
I think, and I'll say this before I pass it over to Breezy. I think you're right in exactly Kano, but the issue is that we only have one wizard, and even before that, we only had 2 wizards, and one of them was all literally about disruption via frostbites, and the other one is all about combo and just doing it as quickly as possible. And the problem is there, to me, it doesn't seem like there's a middle ground right now, and so that's the fundamental issue. But Breezy, what do you think about it?
I mean, I'm thinking back like to even Reinar and Dash and who else? Like Reinar, Dash, even early Viscerai. Well, even Viscerai still today, other than Mavri and Skies, like those WTR arc heroes just really didn't really care about on hits. And I think that obviously was intentional. They were teaching people the game. They didn't want to make it overwhelming. They didn't want too much disruption. Pummel was a thing, so maybe that was enough for them to check that box at the time.
Pummel. Anyway, go ahead.
Ban Pummel. That's the play right there.
Yeah.
No.
Pummel. Yeah. So, so I think now would be the time to get Wizard up to speed because, I mean, look at Assassin. The whole deck runs on hits, and they're going with this blood rot, frailty, and outsiders, and everything's got it. Kyloria, like, dude, there's such detrimental on hits. That's snatch on a stick. Like, there's such existing things right now that I think it would be cool to see, and I think it would increase the interactivity. I think it would also make for some like really interesting play patterns, like while he's playing on your turn. If something hits and you had go again, and to your point, like hamstring shot, well, my whole turn is shot. It almost becomes like a Icelander-esque thing in that environment. Like, oh, well, my turn just got interrupted mid-turn because of this weird on-hit effect. So I think it would be cool. I don't know that it'd be
well, in specifically
welcomed with
Kano,
arms wide open.
It would be a lot harder to actually pull off because you're playing off the top. Whereas Icelander could just throw a blue down there and it was always disruptive, But no, I see where you're coming from.
I think it'd be cool to see because it does seem like every Kano matchup, like there's very few, if ever, cards that get banished and just fizzle. They're gonna get played, and so I think it'd be cool by including those kinds of card pools or cards in the pool that would say, hey, like there's a little bit more tricky. It's not just I'm always going to be able to play it. There's a hey, if you'd previously played this, you can play this. Well, dang, I guess I can't off the top this right now. So it would have to go both ways. Can I disrupt your turn? But also there's some risk involved for me. I'm not a game designer,
spending extra cards, yeah, definitely could be considered a risk. I
Yeah,
will say
true.
this.
Yeah.
Fabrock NY said, great response, TCG Talk. So that comment gives you an extra point there. So we'll pass that on. But that'll also pass us over to the next topic, which is a good one because we just had a new spoiler card come out not too long ago. And no, it's not Breezy's spoiler card. We could talk about that one next time, I guess. But this one is new Numenaris. We're going to call it Numenaris times 2. What are we calling this?
Lag is what they're calling it in the Prism Discord.
Lag just feels so strange.
Really?
I know it's
a
all
skill issue. I lost
old
because
Lumi,
of lag.
new Lumi, and
it's
then
because
lag.
they don't want to. Prisms don't know how to spell.
This is Numenaris, and the other one is I don't know. Oopsinaris. I don't know what it is.
What Lucas Oswald called on the Runaways podcast? By the way, really good podcast. He was like Bluminaris is what he called it. And
oh,
like,
Bluminaris. I like
please
that.
Don't call it that.
I'm calling it that. Bluminaris and,
Wait,
and
why?
Numenaris. That
I don't
seems
get it.
awesome.
I don't know. They thought it was terrible. It was so funny.
I'm calling it Bluminaris. That seems hilarious. Because it functioned better if you had blues in your deck because you could pitch.
Yeah, I guess that's where you came from it.
Yeah, I get that. Okay, so let's talk about this new card. If you don't know what it does, there it is on the screen. It's too small for me to actually read, which is hilarious because my monitor is tiny. But feel free to read it to yourself, everyone. But let me know this. Tell me what your thoughts are on this card first, and perhaps just like why this card is now being printed and your overall opinions on, how this was spoiled and where it took you in your headspace. And we'll start with Dylan this time.
Oh, this is hard. There's so many layers to this, which is the whole point of this podcast. I'll give my initial
Give me your
thoughts
take,
man. Yeah. So my initial take was I'll kind of like go through the 7 freaking stages of grief. But no, my initial take was like, why are we supporting Prism? And like, I don't think this now, but I'm just gonna be honest. I was like, Prism literally just got a whole new hero and a whole new set dedicated to her 2 sets ago. Why are we getting another weapon that is now supporting that hero? And like, this is all opinion. I have zero factual base to this, but like, my thought is like, this hero sells the game. It's one of the top most beloved heroes in the game. It's just business, right? It makes if you're LSS, in my opinion, you want Prism always to be in discussion, just like you want Runeblade to always be in discussion. It's just classes that people love. But that was my original thought. Was like, why are we getting this? But the more I looked at the card, I was like, the card makes sense. Like, I have no problem with the card itself. It was more of just like, why is this an expansion slot right now? And I'm sure they have the reasons for sure. It's just my straight up opinion. But that was my initial take on the card. I'll pass it over to Breezy and we can go back and forth on this. But that was my initial thoughts.
Are these just my initial thoughts right now?
Yeah, let me know. What was your take when you first saw this?
I mean, I'm annoyed by it. I don't know. I mean, there are a lot. I also have to remind myself, since Prism LL'd to today, or to the day they released this card, there's a lot of people in the game that never had to play against Prism, old first Prism, like, because the game really blew up in that time. Like, I wouldn't say doubled, tripled. I don't have the metrics for it, but there's a ton of new players, so they don't have the scar tissue of having to deal with
God, I hate Prism.
Prism, and then it's almost insult to injury when you have Luminaris in the name. So it's like, dude. So I didn't even read it, and I was instantly just like, why? What? I don't care what this does. But yeah. So I mean, at the same time, though, they did say, I think it was with Flake in that on-stage interview that like, hey, like Prism fell flat. Like Dusk Till Dawn kind of fell flat. It didn't go the way we planned, and it seems like this is kind of a, some nails in the broken wall. They're like, oh, we're trying to fix it. Maybe we can get Prism back on her legs. I mean, to be honest, how many Prisms were you seeing play? If anything, they were playing Iris. They were doing the Iris Aura build, and now it's working. Their intentions are starting to see light, because I don't know how many, like Dylan, you were saying, I don't know if that was earlier before we started, but yeah, just like everywhere you look, there's Prisms. Or you're talking about Kano. But you're playing Prism now, even. Like,
yeah. Yeah.
Where were you before this weapon? So
I will
you know what I'm
chime in
saying?
and I will say that I actually, so my first take on this was like, freaking finally, I was excited because this felt like the card that the other Luminaris should have been, right? This
Yeah, for
felt like
sure.
what that was sort of intending to do at a correct like power level, and this feels really good. Like having when Dusk Till Dawn came out, I played a ton of Prism, the new Prism, trying to see like what it felt like, how it how it all functioned, the best way to build it. I built control, I built aggro, I did a variety of things, and it always kind of came back to the weapon being just this really, really too far pared down version of like a go again enabler. Like it almost made you not want to play it because it was so expensive, and it didn't really enable much, especially in a popper meta. And so I would pivot to the Iris build, which got you far closer to the actual finish line, simply because
Mhm.
you were able to kind of push that inevitability of the 4 damage. And then I saw this, and I was like, okay, this is like the perfect response to the underwhelming nature of that previous weapon, because it does exactly what you wanted the other one to do, but it does it correctly and not so powerfully to just be Luminaris from Monarch. And so I was
Yeah.
really personally really excited for this card, because I wanted to play Prism. It's what I taught my sons how to play Flesh and Blood on. I'm gonna take them to a social play gaming thing tomorrow, and one of them's gonna play the Prism Blitz deck. And this card right here feels like the perfect sort of next step for playing Prism in the new version, in the new meta.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
no.
agree. Yeah, go ahead,
Okay.
Dylan.
I was gonna say, so I am not a Prism expert by any means, not even close. But I've put about 40 games in with this new one just on Talishar, like open lobby, like literally just casual play. And I can say that even just in my limited like play, it's definitely got holes. Like the deck is not going to be, in my opinion, unless we have some great deck builders out there, right? Like Finno Black and On Hit Effect, like those are these really good Prism mains that I think will find a build that works. But for your initial pleb, right, there's definitely some holes in the deck because this weapon poses some deck building constrictions. Like the most obvious one is your yellows. Like you need at least, I'd say, minimum 27 to 30 yellows in your deck for this to be viable. And then you have to talk about like, okay, well, do I put an Iris switchboard plan in? Well, if you do that, you need at least minimum about 24 blues to make that consistent, which then limits your deck space. So do you go with a switchboard plan that gives you some play into Guardian Brute, but still not auto win, just better? Or do you say, screw it, I'll just lose those matchups and I'll go full Heralds and try to work my way around it and then be good in the aggro matchup? So there's definitely going to be, like I said to my buddy, I think Prism, my initial thoughts is in the hands of a very skilled pilot, when the deck is refined, the hero is like low B. And that's like me being generous. I think your average player, it's going to be like a low C deck still. It doesn't make the hero great, but it makes the hero viable and it creates discussion, which is good.
Yep.
But I only want to say that because I saw a lot of people on Twitter like just outbursting about how Prism's gonna be broken again. Oh my goodness! Like no one, I'm a Katsu player. No one hated playing Prism more than me. Aggro Heralds was terrible, but I tell you right now, this deck is not the same. There's a lot of restrictions to it. I think.
I thought you
Yeah.
hated playing Kano, and you hate
I,
playing Prism. What do you like playing as a Katsu player?
Prism breaks the
Dromai,
core
probably.
mechanics of the game. Yeah, I used to. Well, until they. Never mind. We'll
Yeah.
talk.
The
That's a
only
different.
hero that doesn't break the core mechanics of the game, Katsu. There it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
What do you
simple.
think,
He's an
Breezy?
honest man. I think something I kind of had to ask myself too. This question was like, why am I frustrated at it? I think I agree with you, Dylan. Is that like the card isn't copy paste as ridiculously punishing as original Luminaris, so I appreciate that they made a toned down version, but I was still like, why did this happen? One, it's James White's favorite hero, which people are mentioning. I forgot about that. But two, it's like there are a lot of new heroes. Or, I mean, I guess heroes that are older than Prism that still haven't got this much support that made the hero go from
Yeah.
F tier to B tier, like you say. Like, where's, and we just saw that happen with Leviah, who really desperately needed it. And now we have Prism 2.0, who just got shot up to the top of like, I'm not saying she was like S tier meta changing hero, but potentially could be with, I mean, a 2 or 3 more cards could happen. And then also, like you say, in the right hands of of a pilot, they could easily turn this deck into, you know, an all around just showstopper of a deck. So I don't know. I think there's some frustration in that from the community, is just saying, hey, like, where's the support for X hero, because X hero is my favorite.
Right.
And so it seems like they're catering to the masses of saying, well, look, we got this pretty Prism person that people used to love. Let's do it again. It feels a little like short-sighted of, well, let's do it in order, and I'm not, it doesn't have
Find
to
our
be
players
numerical.
crying in a corner. Anyway.
Yeah, and I fully believe that once Heavy Hitters comes out and Reinar or whoever these new brutes are, new Guardians potentially could be all the 6 attacks. And I even said a while ago, whenever was it? I think it was Outsiders. There were so many 6 generics in that set. I was like, dude, something's coming. Something's about to happen here soon. Like Prism's coming back. Something's going to go down. And so I think they're going to start juicing up some sets with a lot more poppers and things that can really keep Prism in check, as opposed to just CNC,
Yeah.
which is all we really had in Monarch days, unless your hero was, Guardian or Bravo. But
Well, so let me follow up with this, because you mentioned it slightly there. This, I think TCG Talk, you mentioned it first, but this is taking an expansion slot within Heavy Hitters, a set that is perhaps due to counter Prism's aggro build, and this sort of supports that aggro build in a lot of respects. But it's kind of taking one of those slots. Do you like this usage of this type of card, or just a card in general like this, in the expansion slot? Is this sort of what the expansion slot is used for, in your opinion, or would you prefer it used in a different way? And this, I guess, perhaps from the perspective of maybe if you think that this is sort of a quick reaction to a hero that they want to be better, or do you think that this is just like sort of the natural kind of go with the flow plan that they had in general? Breezy, what do you think?
what? Sorry.
Do you find this
No.
card and its usage in the expansion slot, its printing in the expansion slot, as sort of the exception or the rule going forward? Do you like it? Do you what do you think about it? What's your take?
I think it will have to be the rule going forward, as they've kind of put full on supplemental sets on the back burner. I mean, as far as we know, they're not coming out anymore. So if we want to see supplemental type weapons for heroes that may not be performing well, or maybe they don't have a set plan for years to come, they're going to have to use these expansion slots, which just, I mean, that's maybe a topic for another discussion, is how do we feel about the removal of entire supplemental sets and going exclusively into expansion slots. I like the idea of it, but it definitely throws the immersion off for me. Like having this really thematic, even for my spoiler card, I had a Runeblade card, which is like, here I am, I'm opening this set, I'm really excited to draft it, and like, what is this like Runeblade junk in here? Like, this isn't a great assassin card, but doesn't help me today for what I wish that this could have been something that I could have used, because I'm really only into Kasai. So it feels, hit or miss, but I think that to your point, moving forward, it has to be the rule. I don't know that this could ever be the exception.
Dylan, what do you think?
So it's hard because I don't know how they're testing. I have zero inclination on this, but I don't know how they're testing expansion slot cards, right? Because like you would think common sense occurring, I would guess they're about 3 to 4 sets ahead, is my guess, right? When it comes to like what they're testing, what they're looking at. So are these expansion slots like actual flex spots to where maybe they're only a set ahead on expansion slots, right? Because like this card tells me this card was not made 4 sets ago. This card was made after Dusk Till Dawn. That's my opinion, right? So that tells me that potentially, and same thing even with Coercive Tendency and with Graven's Call, like those assassin cards, like I think those were made pretty close to like this point now. That's just my opinion. I don't have a reference point for that, but so my thought is like I think they're using the expansion slots as kind of like this flex slot in every set where they can be like, okay, next set is this. Like, let's just say after Heavy Hitters, it's Mysteria. So like when Heavy Hitters releases, they're like, okay, given what's coming up in the Mysteria set, like we want to put this, and this in here. What heroes aren't getting enough love right now, right? Maybe Dorinthia needs another specialization going into Mysteria because she's kind of been out of the limelight for a little while, even with this new Heavy Hitter set coming up. So I think that's where my thought is. And to Breezy's point about the supplemental sets, I could be wrong on this. If y'all disagree, it's totally fine. But I feel like the new sets, I love how it is because it gives you the same experience of a draft set, but it gives you the feeling of a supplemental set. Like I remember the original argument was Dusk Till Dawn a supplemental set? Was it supposed to be a supplemental set and they
Right.
switched it, right? Because there was so much draft chaff or whatever. But I think they're starting to refine that now where like Heavy Hitters is technically a draft set, but it's going to have that feeling of a supplemental set because they're really going in on certain things and it's not so wide casting. So I actually enjoy that better because like since Crucible, have we had a supplemental set that really hit? I mean, Crucible was like the biggest one, but I
Fruit was
think
king.
I think Everfest was massive.
Everfest,
I think
I would
Yeah.
Everfest was
EV over
massive.
I think
time. Yeah,
over time.
over time.
I mean,
Everfest
so
went
here,
from good to great.
I want to chime in because I have some agree. I agree with you in a lot of respects, and I have some opinions on that as well. Yes, I think from a if we're looking at a climate wherein we do not have many or any expansion sets going forward, I personally absolutely love that they're doing this with the expansion slot. It's like, okay, here's a hero that did not come out and hit on all cylinders. And I'll use another example. Teklevossen, right? Let's say Teklevossen, they look at it and they go, you know, Teklevossen's a really cool hero. We really like the idea of them building up this mech over time, but it fell flat and he's not showing up and he's not playable within this meta. I love the idea that they can just take an expansion slot a set or two down the line and just give that hero something that turns it on their head. It doesn't even have to be like game-breakingly powerful. It just has to be something that makes players go, you know what? That could work in the right scenarios. And I think this weapon actually does a fantastic job of that because it doesn't make the entire hero better. It makes the aggressive version more functional, and it makes the angels that they printed within the set more functional as well because you can give those go again, you can do more things with it. And it therefore it raises the ability for you to play that hero. Doesn't make them S tier by any means, I don't believe, but I could be wrong. But they have the ability to just give a hero a shot in the arm. And it's not just one hero. They can do that with multiple heroes within one set just because of the expansion slot. So I personally would love for them to do more stuff like this, print a weapon like this, print specializations like they've been doing, give those heroes like a shot in the arm so that players, even if they're not perfect, if they're not like immediate to the top of the tier lists, people go to them and say, I could play that. I could run that out there. I could jam that hero down in a tournament and I could actually do pretty well. And that's what's exciting about fighting game tournaments. That's what's exciting about card game tournaments when a hero comes out of nowhere and puts together a Cinderella style run. And so I think this usage of the expansion slot is exactly what I would want them to do going forward.
Mm-hmm.
No, yeah, I
Agreed.
can definitely see that. I mean, as long as, yes, I agree. I just think there's going to be some. They have to be very careful, which we know LSS is. I'm just saying this to like have a discussion point. Is like if we keep what's felt bad about the expansion slot, and this is me being a sour little ninja in the corner, is like in the same set that we got Wax Off, we got Tome of the Imperial Flame.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so-
You have
and the
not
reason
started
I'm-
talking. You have not stopped talking about that in our
Well,
chat.
I know, but the reason I'm bringing it up here that actually makes sense of what you just said is if it's meant to nudge that class to make it a little bit better to help it out, then like tell me how Wax Off helps out Ninja in any way right now. It doesn't.
I do
at all
agree. I agree that if you're gonna do it, if you're gonna use the expansion slot
as a nudger.
for that, it
Yeah.
needs to be, weighed accordingly. I mean, though some heroes need the support more than others, maybe that's just a reason. Like we could have lived without. What is it? Wax on? Yeah, we could have lived without that for now. But that's the other thing that I've started to notice too, especially as I released my spoiler, is that people are like, "This is cool," but they keep doing this where they're releasing cards that are gonna be good later. Like, where are the auras? Where's like the big brain explosion of like, "Oh my gosh, I can go get this now. I can go get XYZ card." We've been wondering why this card's felt a little clunky. All it needed was this tutor to go fetch it. And so it feels like Wax Off or Wax On or whatever is like one of those cards where like, well, when we go to Mysteria, it'll be cool. Well, maybe we could have had it closer to Mysteria then.
Yeah.
And so we keep getting hit with these like, well, Tome of Imperial Flame. Dromai didn't need that. She didn't need that. Emperor needed it. Dromai didn't
Yeah.
need it.
Yeah, maybe
That's
it's just
another
for
thing. Was
Emperor.
that card
Maybe it's just
supposed to be
Emperor.
for Emperor and not Jeremiah? But Jeremiah is good, so it was immediately used. But no, yeah, I know
Right.
I'm joking with the wax on thing, but like even if you look at Dustwood on, we got cards like Numbskull, which make complete sense. In a Prism set, like giving a card that can't be reduced is really, really good. Dig Up Dinner made complete sense. Starstruck made complete sense. But then you had cards like Bequest the Vast Beyond, where it was like, okay, this kind of makes sense, but it's really a reprint of Skeleton.
Yeah.
Right.
But
Yeah,
anyway,
you get 3
I know it's
skeletons.
really a discussion point. Overall, I'm happy with the expansion slot. I'm just a little sour about Wax On, but that's just a me thing. But like overall, I prefer the expansion slot over supplemental sets. I will say that, regardless of like some agreements, some not.
I will say this: I prefer supplemental sets because I feel like it gives you an entire set's worth of space to introduce new archetypes. But I'm just a sucker for deck building and trying new things. So
Agreed. Yeah.
I fall that way. All right, hey, the next thing we're gonna do is a lightning round, and I don't have a graphic for that because I'm cheap and didn't feel like making one. But I'm gonna give you one topic. I'm gonna give you each one opportunity to speak on said topic, and then we're gonna bounce to the final topic, which is going to be the one that we spend the most time with, and perhaps the one that I think most people want to talk about, and that's the banned and restricted announcement, and that's what it is called: banned and suspension and restricted announcement now. But before we get to that, let's go ahead and hit up our lightning round topic. It is this one. So they reworked the XP rewards, and there's a lot of people that are kind of worried about this with the way that it functions now for emerging like regions within the world, and the XP being used to sort of earn your way into larger scale tournaments versus having to now at this point just rely on ELO as a way of sort of getting yourself from one of those emerging regions into the tournament space. So I just want to hear your one take on this, starting with Breezy. Do you like the change here? Do you not like it? What's your take? Where do you fall on this spectrum?
I am neither an XP grinder or ELO top champion. So I tried to wrap myself into that scenario of where if I was. So I think there are, and I even made a tweet about this. I think that this has the potential, and I'm not saying it's going to happen. I think it has the potential for people to stop chasing so much XP to get the invite. And I mean, I'm not going to say that PQs were ever like a cakewalk or anything, but I think that you're going to see them start to look way more grueling, way more intense, because there's the reward is far more severe, right? Because Brody Spurlock, for instance, he's a local. I've played at many events where he's got like 4 PTIs just in the bank, and he's like, I'm just playing for XP. And so it's like, maybe he would still come, but maybe people not as insanely world traveler-y as he would might be like, I got the PTI. I don't need the XP for this event. I'm gonna go to do this. And so I don't know. I think there's a potential that it swings for some people to have newcomers potentially have a little bit more of an enjoyable experience and not having to deal with like, I'm trying to get that top 15 XP in the world. Like, maybe that doesn't matter as much to people anymore. So could change things, maybe not, but we'll see.
What do you got, Dylan? What are your takes on the change to XP?
This one's hard. There's literally no right answer. Both sides can be abused. ELO can be abused, and XP can be abused. Like Breezy said, we live in Dallas. If you live in Dallas and you just show up, you will qualify via XP. I'm gonna guess we have 15 armories a week here. If you went outside like Fort Worth, Dallas, we have 15. Like you have to pick between where you want to go every single day of the week in Dallas. So you can just, I'm not going to dime anyone out because like they're just playing the system they have. But I remember in ProQuest season, like we'd have people in the corner doing freaking mathematician on like, okay, if I win this, does it give me an XP? Like, do I drop this ProQuest right now? Like, and that just create a bad feels bad, right? Like you have some people who are legitimately trying to get top 8 and trying to get invite because they don't have the opportunity to go to 9 armories a week. But then you have people over there that are literally counting their XP like on a freaking whatever the thing is, the old school mathematician things. And that felt bad, right? So like that's the way that's exploited. ELO though can be exploited a little bit because right, you can choose what events to go to and what not to go to. I can't say this for certain. I'd love to talk to people in smaller regions, but I feel like Elo's better for people in smaller regions because you don't have to compete with like the Dallas USA of the world and try to get in via XP. You can just perform really well at one event. The downside to the Elo thing is if you don't do well at one event or two events, especially if you're in like Brazil or like Western Europe, or Eastern Europe, sorry, like you probably have like one or two shots to get your Elo, and if you don't get it, you're pretty much screwed. So it puts more emphasis on those big tournaments, right? Or those Elo rated events. So there's goods and bads to both. I think I think your opinion changes depending on what type of player you are. If you're a top player, you're totally okay with Elo. If you're not a top player, you're really upset by this because the only chance you had was to participate and do decent and get XP. So there's no right answer. I want to see how this works first for a year, and then I guarantee you this is a change where they're implementing it, knowing in a year they're going to look at it again and see what they have to tweak, similar to the LL point system. I think both of those are like temporary changes as like an overcorrection to see what works.
I think you hit the nail on the absolute head. There's not really a right answer for balancing this because the world and the regions within the world are all in different states. They're all in different places within their community growth. There's some that are just emerging, and one system would work better for them. But then there's, systems and places that are like so built up, like you're talking about here in Dallas, Fort Worth, where it makes sense to even just go the other way. And it's unfortunate that there's not a perfect answer, but I hope that it continues to get tweaked with and sort of maybe lined out in a better and more equitable way for new and emerging scenes, because I believe that the new and emerging scenes are the ones that I'm most, I guess, looking at for the growth of the game going forward. Because like in a place like Dallas Fort Worth, the game has grown to a very large amount already. If you're looking at that and saying, okay, how do we grow more? It to me feels like a head scratcher, wherein you could be looking at a place like a Brazil that is starting to grow from anecdotal evidence and say that is a place that we should target. And so I'm hoping that there's ways and means for them to also receive support while not kind of having to sacrifice so much for these larger regions as well, so that they can try to find a balance. And maybe this is that balance, and we just need to give it time to do its thing and work its way out. But we will hopefully find out.
I could be wrong, but I think they did say that they did consider, or they are considering what they're going to do for the smaller regions, whether it be still inclusions of XP mixed with some Elo or whatever it might be. So it is going to be, we'll all be watching, I think, when they make that release note early next year. So
yeah, I think they could take a page out of and this doesn't have to pertain to the point stuff. Just my extra thought is I think they could take a page out of the esports book, like in League of Legends World Championships and stuff like that. They have region specific slots, and maybe they could do that for Pro Tours at some point. Maybe the game has to be built out a little bit more to do that, but maybe at some point you're saying, okay, for PT1, if there's actually like a 200 set Elo slots or whatever, based off not boxes, but armory participation and like event participation. We're doing X amount of slots for US, X amount of slots for EU, whatever. That's very hard to do and execute properly. But if you do, it just creates a even playing field based off like player count.
Yeah. I hope that they find and thread that line well for the newer regions, because I want them to be able to feel like the game can grow and has the capacity to grow from a competitive standpoint. All right. That brings us to the banned and restricted announcement. It is now being called banned and restricted again, and not banned and suspension. So we're going to dive into this point by point, and we'll just go down the list because I want to hear your opinions on very specific things as well, and to see if you've really thought through a lot of this, because I've given it some thought myself. So as you see on the screen, we have a new scheduled banned and restricted announcement. I love that it's called restricted because BNR sounds so much cooler than BS.
BNR is so much better.
Right, I love it. Oh, I love that. Okay, so first things first, Classic Constructed. No changes. Give me one thought. Dylan, what's your opinion on the no changes to Classic Constructed?
It makes complete sense. Please, God, don't change anything when there's not even a set. Like, yes, I agree. Don't change anything.
Cheers. Crushed it. I agree with you there. Breezy.
Yeah, I would say no changes. I will say, I think that on the back end, I think they need to keep an eye on warmongers. That's all I have to say.
Oh God, I got to give you a point for that. That's too good. That's a very good point. Mentioning the
Well,
warmongers'
only-
diplomacy.
Because of what's down is why. If they didn't, we'll talk about it. But if they want to change anything in LL format, I would agree. I would not agree with you. But because of this, I agree with you. Yeah.
Okay, no, we got to talk about Blitz. Okay, I've been playing
Oh
just
God.
an insane amount of Blitz. I have been grinding, like literally, like
You have been, yeah.
grinding Emperor games. It is so
Mhm.
much fun. I am so addicted to just playing out the Emperor.
Ira's gone. I don't care anymore.
So good.
I'm so glad that I got to play Kano all the way through and saw him off, but I'm so glad that I got to pick right back up where it basically left off, because I was playing for a time. I was playing Surgeon Aethertide Kano, and you know what? Emperor feels just like that, so it was just like picking up right where I left off. But the changes in Blitz, Aether Wildfire is now gone from banned to legal. Stir the
Wow.
Aether Winds is now gone from banned to legal.
Just skip the 2 points. Go to the next one.
And then Centauri Saber becomes a signature weapon for Kasai again, who's going to be legal once she hits in heavy hitters, which makes sense because this is the young version of Kasai that we're getting, and the previous one was Centauri Sellsword. So thoughts, Breezy, on the Blitz sort of moves and changes, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, I think this was always the case when Kano hit LL. These two were going to come back. They were absolutely insane. I mean, I can't remember when Aether and Stir were gone. I think, was that when they did Storm Striders? Was that all in the bundle deal? I can't remember. If not, well, we won't bring it
Oh,
up.
those 2 glorious weeks that Storm Shires wasn't allowed in Blitz. Yeah.
I didn't say it.
Good.
Yeah, so no, I think it's cool to see. I think that, those 2 cards, we've talked about this earlier when talking about Kano, in another wizard archetype. Those 2 cards I think deserve to be in the game. Maybe not as abused as potential in Blitz, but so we'll see. As far as Kasai, I think that was a huge point of contention for a lot of people, because they said, look at this brand new hero, Kasai, she's an adult. And then like 4 days later, she hit LL and her sabers were gone. So people were like, what are we going to do? It's literally reprinted in the set as a token. So it's good clarity here. I really appreciate it. It shows, ultimately, it shows that there really are no rules. They're not bound to their own rules.
Yeah.
And they're willing to go back and say, look, we're gonna make it okay. Like I always
Good
call
point.
them mom and dad. Like James is a big dad, dude. He sees his kids like panicking, and he's like, calm down. It's okay. We're not, we can make small mistakes, but we fix them. We know what we're doing. And so I really appreciate that. And I think that's a big, like, we don't have to figure out, what's Kasai gonna be running, Talishar or something. So Dawnblade.
Talishar,
Feels
that
good.
would
She's
be
back on
awesome.
Sabers.
Dylan,
She's
what do
back
you
on
think
Sabers, and I
about
really like
these shifts from the Blitz meta? How do you feel about Aether Wildfire and Stir the Aether Wind?
Oh no, Blitz. I mean, I was playing Drone Iro with AB4, so Kano didn't bother me too much. And Oasis. No.
Pure
I'm glad.
toxicity.
No, I'm super overall, like, this kind of backing up from this. I'm glad that Blitz has seen like a complete overhaul. There have been like 5 decks that have completely plagued the format for like the last 2 years, right? They weren't like broken bad decks, but they were just, or like degenerate decks, but they were just decks that were good, right? Kano, Ira, Kasai, they just gate kept. Like, unless you just love to play Blitz, people weren't going to play other heroes. Like Emperor. Emperor has always been a good deck. We've talked about this, right? It's been a good deck since it came out. Just no one wanted to try it because there were so many other good heroes. What was the point, right? So,
well, he died to Kano. That was the problem.
yeah, exactly. So that's the exact point. Is like, I'm glad that this overall is here. As for Kasai, in a nutshell, I love this. I'm glad they did this because yes, what the heck would you have played? However, this does give some interesting, like, it as from LSS's perspective, it matters like how much do you care about some negativity, right? Because as much as we see it on Twitter and it's really in our face, they're looking big picture, right? Like, if like, what does 20 tweets mean for their product, really, right? What does 100 tweets mean? Because what if something like this happened for Briar with Rosetta Thorn? What if they made a Briar 2.0 right as Briar 1.0 Living Legend, but it didn't have a good signature weapon to go with it? Now, granted, Runeblade has more options. I get that. But I'm just kind of giving an example, right? Maybe not directly compare Briar, but this does open up the fact of what if this happens later on where like a really beloved hero LLs, but their weapon's really degenerate, and they're like, oh, well, we don't want to put that weapon back in. Because then you have people, they're like, well, you did it with Kasai. Why can't you do it for my hero that I love? Right. So I don't think it's going to be a game changer. I don't think it's going to do much, but it does open up that, I guess the word would be like PR, like issue, air quotes, right? Where like you did it for one hero, but you're not going to do it for this hero because their weapon's bad, where Centauri's sabers weren't that bad. Like it creates a little bit of subjectivity, which is their right. It's their game. But I could see how it could be a feels bad for some people in a certain situation, right? It just happens that
I don't know. I don't see
it.
it. I don't see that being that big of a deal. You already mentioned like what's 20 tweets in the grand scope of the game, and I got to give Breezy extra points for shuffling Emperor sleeves on stream because Emperor is goated. But no, I do think that it's cool to see, and I also want to point out if you're like looking at this going, well, why the heck did we even have signature weapons as a thing if we're just going to reprint the weapon? Keep in mind the signature weapon for Icelander in Blitz is Kraken's Aether Vein. And there was a strictly better weapon that was presented in the next set when she was released as an adult hero. We could see the exact same thing play out with this scenario right here, where, you know, Centauri Sabers are really good weapons, and they were the signature weapon, but they just get completely outclassed by something that we find in heavy hitters down the line here in the next couple of months, because that's just the better weapon for, you know, her or just warriors in general. But I think it's nice to reprint the card anyway, because Bolton makes good use of it, and other heroes can make good use of it. You can play, you know, Centauri Sabers Dory and have a good time with that. So I personally like what they did. And neither of you mentioned the use cases for Stir the Aether Winds or Aether Wildfire in Emperor, and so I can't give you extra bonus points. I had that down on my phone ready to give you extra bonus points if you talked about how Stir actually makes the list in Emperor. But Aether Wildfire is absolute trash in the deck because they didn't bring back Snapback.
Is it bad that in my head I thought Aether Wildfire was a Kano specialization?
No, that's not.
It's really bad in my head that I thought automatically my brain thought it was.
Well, it might as well be.
Man, I wanted Snapback so bad, y'all.
With
they even mention it,
it does make sense though, because the only other two weapons that Kasai could legitimately play is Jubel, which is a meme weapon right now at least, and then the Quicksilver daggers, because she could get those go again and like poke. But even that would be just. I still want to see how those weapons are used. Anyway, I get why they did here, because unlike my example with Runeblade, where there is other good options, like Nebula Blade, whatever. There's really not a good option for Kasai if you don't let her have her sabers.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Okay. Everyone is here for this exact talking point, so let's get to it. The Living Legend format has some really cool, groundbreaking changes and restrictions, and that is now a thing. We talked about the Living Legend format the last time we got together on this, and people really enjoyed that first sort of round table that we did. They liked that idea of us talking about Living Legend and just like the way that heroes are moving through the Living Legend system. And we all kind of came to the conclusion that if the Living Legend format becomes a thing and really hooks on, and if they make tweaks to the Living Legend format to make it more palatable for a wide player base, then it will become one of the premier formats. And lo and behold, after Worlds comes and goes, and we see how that all plays out, and then heck, even the coaxing from last weekend, I think it was last weekend, showed that, there's this hero called Starvo that people are just going to play, and he's just going to dominate. They've made some sweeping changes and introduced a restricted keyword, if you will. And restricted, if you're just now tuning in and you didn't check this out, restricted is essentially a tag that they're putting onto cards where you can only include one copy in your deck. Basically, they're giving it the legendary keyword where you can only play up to one copy in your deck at any given time. And for that, they have restricted Awakening, Channel Lake Frigid, Crippling Crush, Hypothermia, Oaken Old, Starstruck, and Warmonger's Diplomacy. So all of these are limited to one copy in your deck, and this does not just apply to Starvo. As you see, Hypothermia, Channel Lake Frigid can both be played by Icelander. The Oaken Old can, of course, be played by Oldham, and really technically any of the other heroes that we're possibly getting as Guardians come up. And then Warmonger's Diplomacy can be played by everybody. So, what are your thoughts to these changes to the Living Legend format as a whole and to the idea of restrictions, Breezy?
Oh, buddy. Well, I think when you how many are there? 7? When you have 7 restricted cards, that's why you change it from banned and suspended to banned and restricted. That's why you adopt the name back, because they're starting to see restricted cards have a place in this game. And truly, like before I get into my thoughts on the cards, I truly think and hope that we see restricted cards in CC. I think in the future there could be call to action for certain older cards to be restricted just due to like game limitations and game design, rather than an entire ban. Maybe restricting something like Codex of Frailty would be potential, thought. But that's all on the thought of I'm glad that restricted is back. Anyway, I think that in Living Legend, yeah, like you said, we saw what Starvo does. He casinos people to death, and we had an over under that match on the coaxing, and he did it like 8 times or something plus, when it's just that easy to do. And Living Legend is supposed to be not the premier format. It's more of a casual, more of a fun, let's reminisce, let's go back in time, let's relive these moments. It still has to be fun, and those turns were just not fun. Awakening, and they mention it here, it just completely turns the game around. So that's a huge one. That was the biggest one for me. But it does kind of suck to see other heroes that don't even have LL, such as Crippling Crush. The day Bravo hits LL, he's stuck unless they make this change back. So Crippling Crush, as we all know, is a card that Bravo absolutely loves. It's got Bravo in the artwork, my friends. So
yeah, right.
This is a card that has grown, part of his toolkit. And the day that he hits LL, he's dropping down to 1. So it does feel a little weird doing so much just to hit Starvo, but at the same time, it's Starvo, so I don't care. Hit him as much as you want. It's okay. And then Warmongers, to Dylan's point, that is why I'm salty about Warmongers, because why is a card so strong and so good in a Living Legend format, but not viewed as strong and punishing in the premier format of the game? So that's why I think we all need to grab our picket signs and head to New Zealand and say restricted all around. Restrictions all around. Restrictions all around.
On the opposite of restrictions.
Oh yeah,
right.
I mean we could
hit
hit
us
the whole
with it, Dylan. Let's hear what you got. What are you thinking?
Lord, how much time do I got? No. Let's talk about the easy stuff that's not as contentious, right? I'm glad they hit Hyperthermia, and I'm glad they hit Awakening. I think you just ban those cards, but that's a Dylan opinion, right? Those 2 cards and Warmonger's Diplomacy. Those cards should, in my opinion, I'm gonna be a little more emphatic on this topic, not be in the game. Those 3 cards require 0 setup. People people point out that Awakening needs you to manage your life total. No, it doesn't. All I gotta do is let you hit me 1 time, and then boom, I have my most powerful card. Like, that didn't make sense. Hypothermia requires 0 setup. You just play it and their turn's over, especially as an Icelander. Warmonger's Diplomacy requires 0 setup, and I agree with Breezy's point. If you don't ban it or restrict it in CC, but you do in Living Legend, then you're openly saying, in my opinion, that we don't make changes based off the card. We make changes based off the meta. Even if the card is still a problem, just because it's not affecting anyone right now, we're going to let it stay in the game. Which, yes, I guess you could say that, but to me, like, that's a fallacy point on how to do it, and I feel bad for being this emphatic about it. But like, Warmonger's Diplomacy, like, just admit the card's a bad card to have in the game. Like, because the only reason they didn't change it in CC is because the only heroes it really affects is Viscera and Azalea. And the reason they're making changes in Living Legend is because it affects Chain, it affects Viscera, it affects Briar, it affects like half the Living Legend format. So they were forced to make a change, right? Where maybe you should just look at the card being a problem and change that in Living Legend. But no, besides that, my one opinion is Starvo just shouldn't be in the game. And I know that, like, this is opinions on my own section here. Please don't let this fall on these other 2 gentlemen. But like, Starvo, I think, was a design mistake. I don't think it should be in the game. I know that the James White, which I respect his opinion over everybody, literally responded to my tweet while we were sitting here saying that the LO format is for the most powerful things in Fab to exist. That is Starvo, which is the reason that they don't just ban Starvo. Well, if that's the case, then why are we restricting cards that are meant for other heroes, right? Like, we literally just hit 4 or 5 heroes, just trying to whittle down one hero. Why not just ban the hero? The final thing I'll say that is interesting to me is like they say that it's meant, the point of Living Legends format is to do the most powerful things in Fab. And I think if you keep that thought process, the Living Legend format is eventually going to turn into a format that people don't want to play. And because like he said at Worlds, he asked a bunch of people, like their most thing they were looking forward to is they got to play Starvo again. Did you ask the follow-up question? Do they want to play Starvo again because it's a fun, flavorful hero, or because they can just do broken stuff and have fun with it, and just like dunk on people? Because to me, Living Legend format, and I'll stop after this and let Breezy go. I won't ramble too long. To me, Living Legend format is so people can play their favorite heroes when they ascend, and so you can keep that hero identification, right? Like Lexi just ascended. The point of Living Legend format, you should make your changes based on the fact of allowing those heroes to still be played and have fun and not lose interest in the game because your favorite hero Living Legend. If we're just trying to make it kind of like almost like a historic version, like in Magic, but for this game, I feel like people are just going to want to play, because if I can't play my hero, then like what's the point, right? I know it's a lot of thoughts. I could even have more, but it was just an interesting point to me. It seems like there's like combating methodologies on what Living Legend is for versus like the changes they're making.
I agree with you in some respects. I actually don't agree with the idea of banning a hero in Living Legend. It makes no sense for us to print a hero, create a hero, give people access to the hero, and then say, okay, in this format, let's just get rid of it completely. Like that's literally deleting a person. And it could very well be deleting someone's favorite hero, the hero that got them into the game that they first picked up and that they learned and that they want to experience again. So I personally think that deleting a hero and just saying that they should get out of the game completely is opposite of what we would want to do in just Flesh and Blood in general. But that leads to the question, okay, how do you make this hero sort of more, in line with the heroes that it's going to be playing against? And I like the idea of restricting cards. My issue, like you said, is that this overlaps with other heroes, and it does so in a way that perhaps holds them back to actually be playable, and then you're stepping on the toes of those heroes fans. So anyone that wants to play Icelander after she goes now has to do so with one Channel Lake Frigid, and they get hypothermia back, but one hypothermia, and not multiples. And maybe that's enough. If these other things pull his power level down, maybe then we look at it and we revisit it. But I like what they say here. The liberal use of a restricted list is kind of where they want to go. So if that's the case, maybe they very liberally, after like a month or so of testing of this with like actual events, say, okay, hypothermia can come off, Channel Lake Frigid can come off. They're not technically being used in the same use cases for Starvo, and instead let's take away Autumn's Touch, and then all of a sudden Autumn's Touch pulls down the power level that way, like they did when he was in CC. So I personally like the positioning here and the use of this, if it continues to be used liberally and I guess in the way that doesn't nuke all heroes at all times. And maybe that is a good thing for Warmonger's Diplomacy to make it onto that list, because it does seem to like nuke all heroes at all times, right? But you can still run the Silver Bullet one of in your deck to try and get them right when they could. And to your credit, and I feel very passionately about this, so I apologize for taking up Breezy's time, but I like the idea of the format being a place where you can play your hero that's gone, but I also like the idea of you being able to have a format that can be just, let's do powerful stuff. Let's throw caution to the wind and just jam out powerful effects and feel the splash of that. If everybody gets powerful effects, then let's be able to kind of dish those out. It feels very much like another card game that's recently come out, Lorcana, where they've printed these ridiculously powerful effects on certain cards that just like swing the tempo of the game. But the benefit of that is the games end quickly, and you just run it back and you go again, and maybe you can do your powerful thing. Perhaps that's where Living Legend format is trying to make its hay, giving you the opportunity to continue to play your heroes, and the ones that have made it to that point have powerful things that got them there, and perhaps we just need to ratchet down this one. But what are your thoughts, Breezy?
I think, well, I give my thoughts at least on those cards, but I think that if we're going to be honest and we're going to let Starvo exist, which I think I agree. I agree with both of you. Like I see Starvo being, I mean, he was just a, I don't know what was going on in the office for those months where he was being
Yeah.
designed,
It was COVID.
but
They were
yeah,
virtual. Yeah.
yeah. So a lot of virtual testing, and my point is, during his development, pre-errata Briar was a thing,
Right.
and if we're gonna go this way, give us back pre-errata Briar
Yeah.
in Living Legend format, and let Briar do plunder, run, pre-errata Briar things, ball lightning, all of it. If we want to have powerful cards and powerful heroes, that hero was printed and existed for a very long
Yep.
time before being errated. It's not like it was a oops, we actually made a printing error and this was a mistake. This is why we're doing an errata. No, it was intended to be built that way, and people broke it just like they're breaking Starvo. So let us do the same thing with our beloved Grassland Briar Root Blade Lady. Like I think that'd be huge. Be huge. Less crying about Starvo, that's for sure.
I've been saying that as well. At least just run it out there and try the pre-errata Briar, but then it kind of falls back on, okay, well, how do you justify running what was considered the better of the two most powerful decks ever created? How do you justify that being sort of brought back out from the pen, let it loose on the meta, when it's already considered better than Starvo, which we had to restrict a bunch of? Do they just go and do restrictions for that deck, but give you access to that? And if that's the case, why not just keep her where she is at post errata and then just do what they're doing? So I've kind of changed my stance on that, but
Okay.
I like the chaos of it all as well. I would love to see the
Right.
chaos of it.
That's what I mean. I mean, we've known them to do certain things for a month and just see what happens. So let's just throw that in the hat and draw it later at whim and say, hey, look, it's time to let Pre-Errata Briar play on the playground for a little bit, and then we're gonna pull the reins back and say we're gonna restrict. I don't even know what you would restrict. I can't restrict ball lightning. I don't care. That's fine.
That is quite a good card.
I think, well, so we haven't even talked about the restriction. Like, is restricted cards good for Flesh and Blood? Like, so I'm already on the stance of restrictions shouldn't be a thing in the game. And I know this is like in the TCG community, this is truly like a 50-50 split. Some people think it's okay, some people think it's not. I come from Digimon and My Hero Academia and now One Piece, where restricted cards feel bad because what it does is it creates a complete lottery with the really powerful decks. It creates a big lot. It's a lottery game. Do you find your one of card before I find my one of card? If I find my one of card first, I win. If Starvo finds one Crippling Crush and one Oakenold in the first 3 turns, game's over. Like, the game's probably over. And so it creates like this like just casino effect. Now, if you want the format to be that, where it's just people smacking each other and there's a casino-like effect, then sure, that's okay. But there's a reason restricted is like looked very unfavorably, and it pretty much every other card game is because it creates a element of just honestly luck of like, do you draw your card before I draw my stupid card?
Mhm.
And like for like warmongers, like if I find my warmongers in your chain, I'm just gonna park that in my first 2 turns. I'm just gonna park it in Arsenal. I'm just gonna wait, and then I'm gonna beat you when I most need it because I found my one card early. But if I don't find my warmongers, then you have a good chance of beating me, and that feels really bad. And the last thing I'll say is I can see where y'all are saying like don't eliminate a hero from the game. I don't want to either. I just think Starvo is on a completely different level. If you take the names out, you take the nostalgia out, all that, and you just say you have to restrict 6 cards that cuts under 4 other heroes just to make this hero playable in the meta and not degenerate, that hero needs to go. Like I have to restrict 6 cards and I have to cut Oldheim, Bravo, Icelander, and someone mentioned in chat, which I agree with. Now they have to think about, if they care about Living Legend format that much, they have to think about every Guardian card they print now. Like, because it can affect that deck, right? Then you have to restrict those cards, and it just becomes very, very taxing. Whereas if you just get rid of Starvo, the format's in a good spot, in my opinion, and other heroes can have their cards. Although I know that's drastic, and I understand why they don't do it. I understand why James White said what he said. It makes complete sense. It's just really my opinion on it more than anything. Yeah.
Thoughts, Breezy? Final thoughts, closing thoughts on the changes and the additions. What do you think about restrictions in general and applying that to the Living Legend format? Before I follow up with one more question.
I like it. I think it's good because we've seen that this is, I mean, the Living Legend format is in its infancy, right? Like they don't know what's going to be long term for what this format is. Right now, it's, I think whatever that their previous article was with the XP announcement, it had like the percentages of how much is going to be living legend. It's so little right now because they're just kind of testing the water to see what's going to work. And this is just another step forward in saying, do restrictions work in this format? If it's not changing anything, then maybe we look at doing something differently. So I think it's good. I think it's fine. Um, like I said, they used to do restrictions in CC and in Blitz, and there were days where you had to take 2 of your 3 cards out of your deck because of a new restriction. So we'll see how the community responds to that. I think
Did
there
they
could
ever
be
do
potential.
restrictions? I don't think they've done restrictions before.
I think they did. They'd done restrictions before. I can't think of it. It was a long time ago. We can go in the archive.
I wasn't in the game that far back, so
Yeah,
you'll
someone
probably know more
chime
than
in
me.
if you can look them back up. I don't remember them doing restrictions prior to this. I thought this was
Because it
brand
used to
new.
it used to be ban and restriction.
Yeah, they called it that, but then I think they basically just said this is restricted in chain. Or no, that was they said it was just called restricted. Like it's
Oh,
off the list. But I don't remember them actually
oh.
ever doing like this is a one of. I think this is brand new.
Oh, well, I don't know. Maybe I'm mistaking things. I could be wrong. But I think that going into CC, I think that would certainly shake things up, like I mentioned with codexes, or even anything that, if they want to not tiptoe around designing and they really want to let their creative juices flow into
Mm.
sets, into archetypes, into hero abilities and things like that, they can fall back on something like a restriction.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not saying that that's a good thing, but I'm just saying it's an option. So we'll
Dylan,
see. We'll see how it goes.
you said you're not a fan of restrictions. Is that correct?
Yeah, it just creates a casino effect in the game. If you find your stupid card before I find my stupid card, you win. So it creates a big like just who draws better. Especially with really powerful cards. With not like with just like okay heroes, it's not that big a deal. It makes complete sense. But when you start to get to like those really degenerate decks, it now becomes, do I find my power card? If I don't, I probably
Right.
lose. If I do,
Right.
I win.
Yeah. And so this was posted in chat. I can't remember who posted this, but I am curious to see what your thought on this is. Yes, they did talk about restrictions all throughout
Mm-hmm.
this, which I do encourage people to go and read through this. And they mentioned it down here as well with how these cards functioned within just the overall metagame, but also within the deck itself, and how that really just kind of pushed the power level of Starvo past the others in the Living Legend format. So highly recommend that you go and read this. Let me follow up with this final question about the Living Legend format, and we'll start with Dylan. What do you think about this portion here, where they say they're 100% committed to the Living Legend format and see it as an important, albeit more occasional, part of the competitive ecosystem going forward? It's critical that we have a place to revisit the heroes we've loved in the past. While it's unlikely that we can ever reach a state where every Living Legend Ascended hero is a substantial part of the metagame, we do intend to find ways to have a greater competitive diversity than what we saw in their major event. What are your takes on that paragraph?
No, it makes complete sense. I understand like the utopia mind says you want everything to be playable, right? Um and I hope they can find a way to where every hero is like somewhat playable though. Cause like in my opinion, the reason people play Living Legend long term is to play the hero that they lost in CC. Like that, yes, you might have some people that build a Living Legend deck for fun like me. I'm gonna build a stubby hammers degenerate crouching tiger Katsu deck and have fun with that, right? But I think like for example, like when Dromai passes, you have someone like Mara Faris, like she can play Dromai in Living Legend, and you want to create. I think you just want to create the game. You don't have to make every hero viable, but you want to create it like stable enough to where every hero can play, like just play the game.
Yeah.
But that's gonna be really hard to keep. I understand. Over like 5 years from now, when we have 20 heroes in Living Legend, like are you gonna be able to do that? But overall, I like that. I think Living Legend format is the way they're going to keep people in the game long term, because we are a hero specific game. So overall, I hope they continue to do it. I hope we see Living Legend callings once they stabilize it and it gets in a good spot. I think that'd be really cool. Like full, like you travel to mainly play that format. I think that would be really nice. So overall, I'm glad that they're putting some care into it.
What do you think about that paragraph, Breezy, on the commitment to the Living Legend format?
Yeah, I mean it just goes back to the true nature of the game, right? Like this is a huge drawing point to the game. A lot of other TCGs do rotations, and the whole point of not having a rotational format is that you get this like thematic elevated to Living Legend status. And the fact that they, I mean, for years were like, we have something planned, we have something planned. And to see it finally come to fruition and it be this, like I said, it's not, they didn't come right out of the gate and be like, we have a full world championship side event that's going to be like, you get all kinds of, it's slowly phasing into, and they're going to start, you know, giving people what they want in the form of allowing the people to play the heroes that they enjoy, that they fell in love with in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it takes a hero 5 years to hit Living Legends, that's actually even better for the Living Legend format, because that's 5 years worth of people growing and bonding with that hero. That by the time it doesn't feel like this big feels bad moment. It's like, hey, I get to continue this legacy, and actually I get to go play against heroes that I've not gotten to play against. So this is a whole new world for me to explore and another place for me to fall in love with this hero. So it becomes, you know, it's a secondary market for people to enjoy the game. I could also see this being a place where people, newcomers in the game, are just like, I'm not really hyper competitive. I don't want to go win a pro tour. I don't want to play classic constructive. I'm kind of more into this like kind of Wild West environment,
Yeah.
because it reminds me of this game, or because it reminds me more of a RPG, or reminds me of whatever. So I think it's huge. I think I really enjoy it. I think it's, like I said, it's true to LSS's heart of saying we're committed to the game and the characters create. We're not going to take them away. We're actually going to give you a place to have fun with them.
Mm-hmm.
A sanctuary, you know, like a quiet place for you to enjoy these heroes and still get rewarded for knowing how to pilot them well.
The final point scoring opportunity is right here. The commoner bans. This is what we're all here for. Everyone, finally, we got down to the commoner section. Amulet of Ice is banned. Stubby Hammers is banned in commoner. How do you feel about this, Breezy? Do you have an opinion? Give me your take on the bans here. Absolute massive bans.
This is huge. This is huge. Actually, little known fact, myself and Kellen of Red Zone Rogue, and Tommy Fresh, and I can't remember, Smithel Gaming, we're all in this group chat where we were trying to do this commoner like observatory, what's hurting the game, what's not, and we haven't spoken to each other in this chat in a long time. But actually, Kellen was in communication with James, and he would frequently say, hey, like, have you guys noticed anything in the commoner format, anything coming up? But so it's cool to see. I bring that up because it's cool to see that they're not forgetting about this format. They're still paying attention to it. I remember at the time they were saying, like, you know, we don't have the time to really have eyes and ears on the ground of this format because it is so, you know, just kind of for fun. It's very casual. But as we've seen over the years, they've been putting this into every side event, or every event has a side event that's commoner. Every event has a UPF side event. So it's starting to become a thing. So it's good to see that they're putting eyes on it. And Stubby Hammers, I think, is just one of those cards. Monarch was a fun set, that's for sure. I mean, there's just that card is another one that was kind of created in a vacuum. On paper, doesn't seem like that tough, but in commoner, when people don't have access to their power cards, it becomes just a permanent power card, and I can just end the game whenever I decide, whenever I draw into a certain amount of cards. So it's good to see. Amulet of Ice, we were talking about earlier. You know, it's Aether. What is it? It's the ice card, Aether Ice Vein.
Yep.
On an item that just sits there and says, hey, the next time I fuse, you're gonna have a bad day. So I think it's good. I love commoner. I haven't played in a while, but this reminds me I need to play more.
What do you think, Dylan, about Amulet of Ice and Stubby Hammers going in the format?
I'm upset about Stubby Hammers because I like playing Ninja Degenerate stuff. But no, I played a side
okay, I
event.
gotta give you a bonus point for that. That's perfect.
I've played one commoner like set event. It was at the Las Vegas premiere for Uprising, and they had like a commoner side event, and so I played Ira, and Ira is still insanely broken in that format. No, I think commoner is really cool, and I wish there was a way they could make it as more of an entry point for people, because it's kind of like, what is it, Pauper and Magic, right?
Yeah.
Where you can, and Pauper's huge, like, or at least where I came from in North Carolina, Pauper was like one of the most played formats behind Commander. So I hope they continue to try to give Commoner a little bit more limelight, maybe with more organized play opportunities or something. But yeah, I like that they're at least keeping it up. I think the one thing I'll point, and this doesn't have to be point driven, is I hope LGSs find a way to like incorporate different. It's really hard. I know it's hard, but incorporate different formats in their armory, or even like if it's not an armory, non-armory event, like having 1 week Blitz, 1 week CC, 1 week have a commoner maybe once a month. I think that would also help a lot. But I like it. Ira's still broken, so I'm
I
okay
agree.
with it.
You're still
All right. Yeah.
get out of here with that track. Now here's the thing. Both of you should have said this. This card being banned in that format is perfection. I hate Amulet of Ice as a card that
Card's
gets
so
played
bad.
against me. It is so awful and terrible and bad that I'm so glad that, like, I would much prefer Stubby Hammers be in the format than Amulet of Ice, because Amulet of Ice is just one of those cards that says you won't have fun when this is on the board. At some point, I'm going to use this effect, and you just don't get to have fun. It feels like Warmonger's Diplomacy in some respects, if played into a slow enough matchup, that I am like so glad that this card is gone. And I'm not a huge commoner player, but I did go on a stint where I played. This was pre Worlds, because I was going to build a commoner deck. And so I played maybe like 10, 15 games of a couple of different decks in commoner, just try to put some fun things together. And every time I played against an Icelander, they played and resolved Amulet of Ice. I was like, I don't want to play this format because of this stinking card. So I think this is a huge move, and I think it's to your credit, one of those moves that you can make that allows LGSs to get more people perhaps in the door, because cards like this don't make me want to play commoner. But when they're gone, things get a little bit less like oppressive from the Icelander perspective. And I prefer that. By the way, they also mentioned that they are ending suspensions. They're no longer suspending cards. They're just doing bans and restrictions, which I think is cool. But that rounds out our point total. And look, even though the absolute slander on Wizard sides of things at the beginning, he rallies it back and picks up the win just by a nose, by a hair with the wins. And Breezy, you got to give him a round of applause on that one, because he came with the spice, and he came with the thoughts and the well thought out plans, man.
Yeah, that's what happens when you take notes, man.
Oh goodness.
He took so many notes. Y'all should see his notes. He shared them with us beforehand. He had notes on everything.
I didn't look. I could have gotten an upper hand.
Yeah, you should have snagged those notes.
Oh, no.
So
Yeah.
congratulations for picking up the win and scoring the most points. You've won absolutely nothing. You get
done.
The point. Everything's made up. The points don't matter at all. That is.
I get Cold Pull Stormstriders.
Oh God, if you got a Cold Foil Stormstriders, I would come to your house and I would take that back. So I will give you an opportunity to say some words, some congratulations are in order, and you get to gloat a little bit, and then I'm gonna fire a fun final question at both of you, and we can take a question from chat as well. But feel free to parade around your victory.
No, yeah, it's not gonna be a parade. I did want to clarify one thing, just because I think it's a good point to have as we have these fun discussions. Is like, just because I have like my emphatic opinion about Starvo doesn't mean like I'm like upset with the format or upset with anything. I think none of us are here. It's just an opinion, right? Like, I think the game overall is in a good spot. Living Legend, like, there's gonna be so many like eeks and creeks they have to like iron out in the next year, right? They have so much of a card pool to test and stuff. So I'm super, regardless of like my opinion or thoughts on it, I'm super excited about the format. Like, I literally have a Briar deck built and I have a Katsu deck built, and whether I win or lose, like, I'm gonna have fun playing Stubby Hammers Katsu. So super excited to see where that goes. This year is gonna be really fun. Heavy Hitters is upcoming in the beginning of the year, so that's gonna be really cool. I'm actually really excited about, maybe we can talk about next time, like Adolka Sai. I think she's gonna be really fun to do. I've even just seen people playing her on Talishar with like the limited card pool she has. That's been really fun. So super excited for this year. I think it sounds like a broken record, but I legitimately also think this is the healthiest meta that Flesh and Blood's been in. One of the healthiest ones. Like, it seems like there's tons of heroes that are playable. That's really nice to see. I think like the Battle Hardened this past weekend had 7 different heroes in it. So
Yep.
that's really, really cool to see. So yeah, overall, even though I disagree with some little things, like, it's just a fun disagreement, and I'm happy with where the game's at.
I love it. Okay, here's my fun question that I had prepared for both of you. You will both give me, in your opinion, the most beautiful Marvel that they printed in 2023. What is the most beautiful Marvel that they printed in either Outsiders, Dusk Till Dawn, or Bright Lights? They did not print a Marvel in the Round the Table product, but you tell me your opinion. There's no wrong answer. There's no right answer. What is the most beautiful Marvel in those sets. Here's a list of all the Marvels they printed. Unfortunately,
Okay.
February doesn't have the
By year.
Marvels like actually on there, as you see. So we can't take a look. I wish we could. If we view, do they have? Oh, yes, they do. Okay, so we have to click them individually. Sadly, we have to click them individually.
We're looking at
looking.
Outsiders, Dusk Till Dawn, and
Bright Lights.
okay, so Bright Lights is out. It's either Outsiders or Dusk Till Dawn.
I was waiting for one of the two of you to say that. Bright
yeah,
Lights.
it's not
nothing
Bright
against
Lights.
Lights. You can't contend with the full art.
Well, they
Yeah.
admitted
Other
they're not
stuff.
going to do that anymore. They're going to go back.
Yeah.
It
I
was
didn't
a
even
sad.
pull a Marvel in Bright Lights.
It's unfortunate.
It's definitely one of the angels. It's got to be. It's just which angel do you think?
That's up
Well,
to you.
I've got a sleeper one.
Okay,
Yeah, I'll let
go.
you
Hit me
first,
with
Carter,
it,
if
Breezy.
you're already on it.
Wait, what were the sets?
It was
Outsiders.
Outsiders, Dynasty. No, not Dynasty. Outsiders, Bright Lights, and Dusk Till Dawn.
I forgot about.
Oh my gosh, I can't find the name.
Codex.
Hold on. I see the card. I see the
forgot
card
about
because
Codex.
because
That
I see
makes
the
it
card
harder.
because it's my background.
Oh yeah. You got your Aegis
I can't remember-
Archangel of Protection.
Yes.
Protection.
That
Yeah.
that is 100%. No, that's not it, is it?
Yeah, that's the other side.
It-
Here,
okay,
I'll go back.
Oh,
I'll
okay,
flip
okay,
it,
okay.
and then I'll click it, and
There
then I'll
we
click
go,
it
there we go.
again, and then I'll click it. This specifically,
Yes.
this side.
That side specifically.
Okay. You know what?
Yeah.
You picked my answer. This is, in my opinion,
Lord.
the most beautiful as well. But it's very close for me because, like, I think this is just an incredible looking. This side specifically,
Oh my gosh.
it's just
Yeah.
absolutely incredible looking. Chat, you can
I mean,
sign in
yeah.
and you chime in as well. There's a setting in your profile for high rarity images DM. Okay, let me see. How do I find that? Settings
Soraya?
in my profile.
Fair edition.
Am I gonna get doxxed by doing this? Favorites? No, this is
No,
not.
you aren't.
Where's the-
Yeah. You didn't know February has your home address in it?
yeah, right. There's all my decks. Like I've been messing around with. Okay, no, here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, this Gianna
Oh
deck.
wait. Nope, I take it back. It was gonna be your edition, but it's not.
Oh, is this how people get full rarity in Talishar?
Yeah, you can change it.
I had no idea.
Well, how do you do
I've
it?
always been like, wow, what you
It's
just
in your
did?
settings.
I missed
It's
it.
in
I
your
didn't see it.
settings.
So you're an Erudition fan?
No, I changed. It's Levia. It's got to be Levia.
Okay, I was thinking someone would say Levia. I
Levia and
thought-
Erudition's a close second, but
I
Levia.
wouldn't
is
say
just,
she's. I mean,
I
she's
literally
alright.
have a portrait of her framed above my desk right now. I have.
That's a pretty good one. That's a pretty setting wheel in your settings. Okay, hold on.
She's just standing there. No, she's pretty. She's amazing. No,
setting
she's amazing.
wheels or preferences. Where is it at? Deck builder, card sorting, card grouping. Wait. Okay, yeah, that's by that.
Gallery
Down from
list.
look at that.
Gallery?
Count up from core deck. What? I'm choosing that opportunity. Hey, I'm just changing my my stuff all over here. Where is it?
No, but
Gallery.
yeah, if we don't
Where'd you see
do
it?
Levia, then yeah, I guess Erudition would be like that's my favorite one out of all of them. I love the purple on that one.
Where is it at? Someone tell me. Where am I? Just like
don't know,
totally
man.
missing it.
Tie is a good one. Yeah, all of the
Allow spoiler theme override.
dragons are amazing.
Oh, it's right. Is it right here? Oh, I'm stupid.
Oh, special edition.
All right, let's
Oh,
try
that's
it.
what it's
Let's
called?
see. Let's see if that's it.
Special edition.
All right, let's go. Marvels. Choose rarity. Marvels. Select. Yeah.
Whoa.
Oh,
it?
we're rich now, boys. Oh, we've done it. We've done it. Yes. I mean, come
Wow.
on. How do you not just look at that and go?
Also, yeah, I mean, even
Sheesh.
the text, like just the fact that that's the spectral shield one, it's so thematic. It's so on brand. It looks so good.
Yeah, so I thought one of you might pick one of the the codices. I thought one of you
Those
are so
might pick
good.
the codices.
The codexes were hard. I will say, funny story time. If I can do it 2 seconds, it's funny for chat, and she's probably in the chat, so I'm gonna embarrass her a little bit. It's funny. Reagan, who just got into Flesh and Blood at the time, was opening a box before she realized that she only pulls fables, and it was her first box ever, and she had done it. It was all stacked up, and I just was like, something's telling me to check that card just because it was the dragons. I'm flipping through, and it was a Marvel Invoke Caloria, or not Caloria, Yindarai, just Yindarai, just sitting there, and I was like, oh my goodness! So I almost threw away a Yindarai. It was great because she had only seen the front of it, which is still the normal.
Yeah,
Invoke.
it's this one.
So it was funny.
Mhm.
Anyway,
Yeah, I mean, like
Marvels are a huge,
Marvels are amazing. Look
though,
at all these
huge addition to the
Marvels.
game.
Look at all these.
Yeah, I'm gonna be able
So
to
good.
bling people out now with my full art cut to the chases and Telestars is great. Okay.
Like what's okay? So what's the best ever printed? Because it only goes back to last year with the
That's easy.
dragons, right?
Emperor.
This guy. No.
Oh, you think CNC?
CNC.
The Marvel. Where's that on here? I can't see it on here. I can't CNC it on here. Where is it?
Command and
Best
Conquer.
Oh,
ever
you know
printed.
what? It's not a Marvel. It's not a
Fable.
Marvel. Yeah,
No,
it's
so I
just a
guess it
Fable.
doesn't count.
Okay, doesn't count. No, get out. Does
It has
not
to be
count.
Emperor then, yeah, just because of the rarity. Like
Emperor
if you pull an
is
Emperor,
white.
Emperor's
Yeah.
so good, dude.
White
It's
Has
not only
to
that,
be
but the
Emperor.
1 in 10K. You know the
Ooh, look at that.
dude.
That's
So
tasteful.
good.
I got.
I've pulled
sitting
2
right
of
here.
those.
I'm sitting right here.
I've pulled 2 and
I have
sold
not pulled
2.
one.
This goat over here of pulling 2.
Marvel
Nah,
Crown.
I think it has to be this. Marvel.
yeah,
What?
It really
Marvel
is
Crown?
so good.
Like the
Marvel
Amethyst
Crown
Tiara?
is honestly
Is that what they're
the
saying?
black
This one.
bordered or the black darker like Crucible of War flame border looks
Yeah,
so
mine-
good on those.
Mine's sitting on my desk too. I just don't know where it is. It's under one of these stacks.
I got
I've
nothing.
seen one Angel Marvel, which is Soraya, which I don't. That's too rich for my blood. But
Oh yeah, so the Marvel Soraya, where's that at? Is just
there.
choice. I don't have this card, and I'm not paying for it. How do I flip it?
go back
We
to
gotta
it, then click it.
Yeah, we gotta find the other side of her. I think that's strange. Oh
right
yeah.
there.
Oh,
there's
you
just-
think
there we
she's
go.
she said? Oh yeah.
Sheesh! Look at that. Where'd it go?
Was that
There
the
it is.
first?
Man?
Was Dynasty what was the first Marvel set?
It was Uprising
Uprising. That's right. Yeah, yeah.
with dragons, right?
Yep, that makes sense. Good
This
call.
Soraya. You know what?
Only
Underrated.
solid $400.
Yeah, that card is ridiculous. Underrated though. I think all of the Marvels in Dynasty are like
Oh yeah.
super good. Like, are you
Yep,
kidding
I
me?
totally agree.
These are incredible. And
That
I've
blacked out.
literally bought multiple. Well, that's not true. I've bought which one?
I traded Breezy.
Surge
I
and
got the
Aether Tide.
Sandscour Great Bow from Breezy. I forgot
This
what I traded
card?
it for.
Like, look how good that looks all together. Like, the composition works so well, and the color choices, like the palette works so well with the border. So good. Worth it. I wish this card were more playable so that I could just jam it onto the table every single turn, every single game. So good. Starvo was the first Marvel. Yeah, he was
That's
just not
true.
called a Marvel. That's a really good point. What did they call it? Like, if I wanted to find that in Fabrary, how do you find that?
It's just like a double-sided majestic, and they're like, "Wait, we should name this. We should name this technique."
Bravo.
Also, can we just
Yeah.
point out the fact that I appreciate that LSS just calls him Starvo alongside us.
Yeah.
Yeah, they finally did it.
They're just like, yeah, that's whatever. That's his name.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, everybody, that is that. That has been your very first round of give and take. If people enjoy this and you want to do this again, soon-ish, let us know in the comments below or in chat, and we'll see if we can make this a more regular thing. And I will actually stop being lazy and put more work into all of these overlays and graphics and things. I sat down and did all of this like mid-morning, afternoon, and it was like, this is way too much work. So I just, at some point, I was just like, we're just going to do blue and red. Those are going to be the colors, blue and red. But if people enjoyed this, if you liked it, then let us know and we'll keep rolling these out. But gentlemen, do you have any final words for everybody at home?
I have
Go
fun.
sub to,
I don't
go
know.
sub to DM Armada, share the video. Yeah, hopefully we can keep doing this. I would like to do this like every other weekend, every other week. We'll try to keep it up for y'all. Let us know
Links
what
to
other
their
topics he wants to
channels
do.
in the comments below. Links to their channels in the comments below. Make sure.
Hey,
that
someone
we
said my
plug
link
those.
wasn't working, by the way.
Why?
It isn't working.
Oh.
That is correct. Wow.
Huh. Okay, well, we'll
Sabotage.
fix that up. Good call.
Yeah, we'll
Plus
fix
3
it.
points. Plus 3 points to make
You're
it up.
right. You're right. There we go. Done and done, just so that you can feel better. Okay. Goodbye.